everyone. I think we can begin the program now.
All right. So, Rick, you had requested to answer this next question last. So we're going to give this back to Dave and then over to Scott and then to Rick. And this is a question that's hard for me to ask as a fly shop owner because I think we get asked this an awful lot in the fly shop. And it's the question is, if you had one fly and one fly only for trout, what would it be?
So I'm going first?
You might as well.
I'd rather go last.
Well, Rick said he wanted to go last, so you're out of luck.
He has good reasons, unfortunately. If I had one fly to fish, it would be March brown spider soft tackle. And that goes back to personalities again, but I find myself more and more getting into situations where the March brown spider soft tackle works and catches fish. And it's a way that I like to fish. I like swinging soft tackles. It's strangely enough, I don't fish for summer steelhead. Trash fish is Rick. I got Rick in trouble for calling summer steelhead trash fish once. That's not part of this story tonight, so I'll tell it some other time. Well, maybe I could tell it. Should I? We were speaking in Idaho Falls, Idaho together. We used to speak together. We don't do that anymore. But anyway, I was giving the banquet talk, and I gave a slideshow on small stream fishing, and I showed a picture of a waterfall, and I always said, when you fish small streams like you grew up in Astoria, you want to fish for the little cutthroats above the waterfalls, you have to have a waterfall to block out what Rick Hafele calls the trash fish. And so at the end of my talk, some great big burly guy like Dean here came up and said, "Dave, we really resent you calling steelhead trash fish." I said, no. Rick Hafele called them trash fish. So where was I?
Explains the slash tires I got.
I'm glad you were driving on that trip. So the March brown spider really suits my way of fishing. I catch a lot of fish on it. The older I get, the fewer flies I carry, and the March brown spider sort of enlarges itself and becomes the first one I tie on. The fish are active and moving and whatever. But that's my favorite fly, and I think I can fish it as a nymph. I can cut off the hackle if I want to, or I can just add a split shot or something. I can fish it as a nymph. And I can dress it and fish it as a dry if I want, an emerger or a dry. So it's a very versatile fly. And the one thing I would say in answer to this question is, don't use a fly that's not versatile. If you're just going to have one fly, make sure it fishes different ways. Before I hand the mic to Rick, I'm talking about soft tackles, and there's a new magazine out called the Soft Tackle Journal. And I did write an article for it, which is that's an aside, but I want you all to be aware of the Soft Tackle Journal. And he sent me a few extra copies, and I'm going to give a couple of them away here, maybe 2 or 3. But the first one to Phil. Where's Phil? Because, come up here, Phil. Phil was sitting at a table, and I came over and sat with him to eat my pizza. And you guys came up to have so many books signed that Phil got displaced. This is my apology, Phil. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for being gentlemanly about that. And Dean, was it you that had a wet fly book?
Yes.
Okay, so I wrote my article in here as an addendum to my wet fly book because I wrote about a fly that's not in the wet fly book, and I thought it should be. So this is an addendum to the wet fly book. So
thank you.
I'm giving this to Phil.
Dean.
Dean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I get confused in my old age. And I'm gonna give one away, and Rick recommended that we have, what do you call it, a trivia question?
Yeah, trivia question.
So the trivia question is, the fly that I wrote about is the water hen blower. And can anybody answer what would the hackle on a water hen blower, what bird would it be from? I didn't hear an answer.
Moorhen.
So who said that? Come up and get this.
Pass it back to him. It's probably going to be easier. Oh, he's going around the other way.
You know what's interesting about that is that I was going to say water hen, but moorhen is correct. So you actually should have written the article.
Actually, our common Hughes are a substitute for him.
Well, it's in there, and I don't think I used the term moorhen. You're correct. That's why I'm retiring.
Well, first of all, let me say Dave's full of crap. and you shouldn't listen to anything he says. But when I first got into serious fly fishing, which was, well, we won't say how long ago, but anyway, it was a while. I always kept a copy of the Kaufman's catalog. Everybody remember that? The old Kaufman's catalog, yearly catalog. What a work of art that was. I always kept one in a handy place, like, well, next to a small room where I often did some reading while sitting down. We won't go farther than that. But anyway, I'd read the Kaufman's catalog and learn a lot about fly fishing from it. And one of the things Randall Kaufman said was, if I had one fly to use, it would be a humpy. So I got busy and I learned to tie humpies, and that winter I tied up humpies in all sizes and all colors, and I took them to the chutes, and I couldn't catch squat on that one fly. It didn't do anything for me, almost anywhere. I think a few years ago I finally took all my humpies and dumped them in the garbage can. Because that's what you do with the flies that don't work for you. It's either that or you donate them to the fly fishing club for their raffle. I didn't say that, did I? Right. So they'll distract somebody else, and that leaves you with more fish. But anyway, no. If I had one fly to fish, well, I'd be very depressed because I'm glad I don't have. I have many more flies to buy, but size 16 flashback pheasant tail. Pretty versatile fly. You can catch a lot of fish. And why does it work so well? Because trout eat a lot of nymphs, and a lot of nymphs are brown and size 16. So, and it's also really easy to tie. And that's my favorite fly, is ones that, well, it's my second favorite fly, is ones that are really easy to tie. My favorite fly of all time is the last fly I caught a fish on. That becomes my favorite fly.
Well, you know, those are some of the dumbest answers I've ever heard. I mean, a soft hackle as your only fly you need if you only had one fly? I mean, what, are you just going to fish riffles? You're never going to go anywhere else? I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. And then the pheasant tail, I'll give you credit. That'll catch fish, but the only fly you're ever going to want to have with you? I mean, I don't know, Scott. That's pretty bad. You know, for me, if I had only one fly to fish with, there's no doubt about it. It would be Rick's Raging Rhyocophila. And it's the Rick's Raging Rhyocophila is a green rockworm nymph pattern, a beadhead nymph pattern. You can tie it in sizes 18s to 10s if you want. Usually I fish them, you know, 14s and 12s and 16s. It's a nymph, and we know 80% of the trout's diet is nymphs, so you want a nymph pattern. You don't want a soft hackle as your only fly. That's crazy. And so you got nymphs, you gotta have a good nymph. And caddis, the green-colored caddis, the hydropsychids, the chematopsychids are one of the most common caddis in western streams, bar none. And they're present year-round in the larval stage, and they drift a lot in the drift. So they're one of the most common insects in the drift. So it's a great pattern for that. And if you're lake fishing, you can use it in lakes as a small chironomid pupa pattern. So you can even fish with it in lakes. You can fish with it on a dropper below a dry fly. You can fish it at like a pupa pattern and let it swing up from the deeper water towards the surface, so you can use it on a swing. You can dead drift it as a nymph. You can fish it with a Euro nymph outfit. There's no doubt about it. The Rick's Raging Rhyocophila is by far the only fly that you would ever have if you had just one fly to use. And I've got a whole bunch of them for sale over there by my books.
You keep it.
I just got something I got to ask here. Dave, have you ever designed a fly and named it after yourself?
You know, Dave Whitlock passed away recently. You do know that, right?
Yeah.
And I love Dave Whitlock. I used to call, when I edited the magazine, Dave wrote for me, and to distinguish between the two of us, I called him the Great Dave. And I would never have the temerity to name a fly Dave's anything. Even now that he's passed away. No.
Well, I never designed a fly and named it after myself either.
Yeah, well,
No,
that's...
so yeah.
There's a reason you didn't name it after yourself, because they aren't working.
I should have named it the Rick's something if it didn't work.
Actually, Skip Morris named it.
Stupid caddis pattern.
Rick,
I don't.
to my defense, Skip Morris named that fly. He said, "Oh, this should be called Rick's Raging Raycon."
Oh, okay.
Anyway, we better move on.
Well, I think we need to bring this to the audience for a vote as to who thinks these guys have the best answer. So, starting with Dave, let's have a raise of hands for those of you that have fished a March Brown Spider soft tackle. Okay, well, not that many, not enough.
That's pretty
you guys.
sparse. That's
not
pretty sparse.
enough. Okay,
Not-
so moving on to Scott's flashback pheasant tail. How many of us have fished a flashback pheasant tail?
Oh, everybody,
hey.
everybody's fishing that.
And the Rick's Raging Ryacophlia, how many of us
You
have
can
fished
lie.
the
Come on, folks. You
Raging-
can lie. You don't have to tell
Yeah,
the truth.
pretty-
We're fishermen here.
Well, Scott, you're the man. Yeah, you're the man. Okay,